Hey, what's going on, everyone? I'd like to welcome you to what I'm calling Scripture Sundays. Now, I come from a Christian background. I grew up going to church, I went to Catholic high school, but as many of you know, if you followed the channel for any length of time, you know that in my late teens, early 20s, I went through a big shakeup, a big spiritual awakening, and I really started to experience my own multidimensionality. And I started to become aware, as maybe you have, that religion in its current form has become very dogmatic, rigid, in a lot of ways divisive, unfortunately. And I saw that it was teaching people to suppress their own darkness, their true emotions, the aspects of themselves that they didn't like, right? We're told to put on our church face, to be a good boy. But in doing this and repressing all these parts of ourselves, the shadow only grows bigger, and it starts to manifest in these strange imbalances, neuroses, distorted loves, addictions, diseases. And so for a period, I became very embittered and disenchanted with religion. And yet, I also saw all of the positives. Some of the most incredible, loving, giving people I knew were people of faith. I saw the sense of community that it fostered. I saw the deeper meaning and the purpose that it gave to people's life. And so I started asking, how can I start to bridge the tenets of my own faith with those of other religions? And so I started studying other traditions, ancient philosophies, metaphysics, the spiritual teachings of all ages, all in the pursuit of unity, because I really believe this is what humanity needs at this time, is togetherness, not division. And so this is what I hope to do with this series, is to teach and to share the things that I have learned in my journey in a way that is all-inclusive and non-dogmatic in nature. So no matter where you might find yourself right now, religious, atheistic, spiritual, maybe you're just starting to question the world and examine your own beliefs. Wherever you might be, I hope you will join me in what should be a fun and exciting journey as we dive into many of the big philosophical questions and a lot of the incongruities that plague modern religion. So, I do want to ask that you give this video a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button below so you don't miss any videos moving forward. And as always, leave me a comment. I love hearing from you guys. I would love to hear your thoughts and your questions and recommendations for topics that I should cover in this series going forward. So leave that in the comment section down below and let's jump in. So the question that we are going to tackle today is there only one true religion? And this is a big one. As I mentioned before, I come from a Christian background. My parents were Christian from the time I was born, but my grandparents were Buddhists, and so I grew up with this sort of dichotomy of beliefs, this almost inner tension, if you will. I remember when I was 10 and my grandmother passed, I was consumed by these questions. Did my grandmother, one of the most loving people that I had ever met, did she go to hell because she didn't profess belief in Jesus before she died? And if God did send her to hell, my 10-year-old brain said, was this really a God that I wanted to continue following for the rest of my life? And so this is something that I think a lot of people experience, or anybody who's really questioned and examined their own beliefs come up against this question, that how is it that every religion believes that they and they alone are correct in the truth that they claim to have, right? I think when we assess the world from within the framework of our own beliefs, everybody thinks they're right. And I think this is the problem, because we can't use the parameters of our own belief system to justify that belief system, which is what a lot of us do. If you ask a lot of religious people, how do you know you are right? They'll say, well, because God said so. In other words, The God of my holy books told me that I am right, and so, therefore, my beliefs are right. And this could be true, but we could do this with any philosophy or worldview. If we ask a Nazi, how do you know you're right? They'll tell us, well, because Hitler said so. If you ask a communist, why is communism the best financial system? And they'll say, haven't you read the works of Karl Marx? Karl Marx obviously knew what he was talking about, right? And so I think this is what we do. We look to some external authority to validate our beliefs or give us permission to take our own rightness out into the world. But one of the things that, one of the big lessons I've learned over the course of my spiritual journey is that true spirituality, the true pursuit of truth, is about embracing paradoxes. It's about getting out of this black and white mindset of right and wrong, us versus them, this attitude of tribalistic exclusivity, and to get out of fighting one another over who's right, who's wrong, and really starting to transcend to a higher plane of consciousness from which we can view our own beliefs. Human perspective, by its very nature, is limited, and so there are many, many perspectives from which we can view the ultimate truth. I think that many people who have walked this path in the past have been labeled heretics. They've been labeled these overly liberal spiritual people. But what the true seekers of truth, I think, eventually discover is there is only one religion. And this one religion has taken the many forms that we see today: Christianity, Buddhism, Taoism, Hinduism. It is all, there is only one religion, one universal truth that has been filtered down through many individuals, through the framework of belief of many cultures and tribes. This truth is beyond words. It is beyond logic. It cannot be understood by the rational mind. It must be lived and experienced. And the best way that we have found to do this is to portray it through story, through myth, allegory, parable. But these pure teachings have been on earth for many, many, many thousands of years. We had them in their pure form in the very ancient and advanced civilizations, places like Atlantis. More recently, we had it in the land of Kem, or ancient Egypt, the survivors of the Great Flood and Atlantis, who were able to maintain this. And there's been a lot of lies we've been told about Egypt, about who they were and what they knew, about the things that we have uncovered in that part of the world. And I think there is this idea that the Egyptians were these very unsophisticated, very primal people, right? We're taught in our schooling that they worshipped this pantheon of many, many gods. And there's sort of this superiority that we look down upon them, like these silly people with their fairy tales. They didn't know anything, right? But I think the big misconception is that they did know a lot, and what we know has been distorted. I remember a lot of time that I spent in ancient Egypt, and when it comes to spirituality and their beliefs, they understood that there was only one God, one divinity, one consciousness. But to them, the name of this God, it was unspeakable. They never said it. It's not in any of their hieroglyphs or drawings or texts, because to them it was unknowable. It was infinite. And so the way they understood it was through this pantheon of gods. You could think of it as every god in the pantheon represented a different aspect of the one divinity. So in the same way that we might say clever as a fox, the fox might represent the clever, cunning aspect of God, and so this is why we see a lot of these gods are depicted with animal heads, because it's the spirit of the animal, and what the spirit is trying to convey to us, which really represents that aspect to them. Probably the god that most closely mirrors our religious conception of God is the one that they called Osiris, one of the most important gods in their pantheon. And in their story, this god Osiris, the god of light, he has a half brother named Set, who represents the opposite polarity, the darkness, the evil. Set eventually became Hasatan in the Hebrew tradition, and of course Satan in the Christian tradition. And as the story goes, long story short, Set tricks Osiris, ends up killing him, chopping his body up into 14 pieces, scattering it across the land of Egypt, and is up to Osiris's wife Isis to recover the body and put it back together to resurrect Osiris. And she manages to do this, at least enough for the two of them to conceive a son, the Son of God, through a virgin birth. The Son of God is named Horus. He is born, he ends up defeating the power of evil. He defeats Set in this battle, and ultimately is the living embodiment of the Father. He completes the resurrection of Osiris, and he becomes known as the Son of God, the Savior of mankind, the bringer of light, who imparts salvation onto all humanity so that evil is defeated and the light will reign forever. Maybe the story sounds familiar, and it should. This is why when we look to ancient Egypt, early depictions of Christianity, even to places like the Vatican today and the artwork and the statues, we find that the depiction of Jesus exactly mirrors depictions of Horus in ancient Egypt. And this isn't to say that this undermines the validity of Christianity. It doesn't mean that the story of Jesus isn't true. It just means that Jesus is the universal embodiment of a much larger myth, a universal principle that tends to repeat itself throughout time. And this is why Jesus spoke of himself in the third person. He very rarely says, I saved you. He says, the Son, whom the Son sets free is free indeed. So he calls himself the Son, or the Son of Man, because what he's trying to say is, I am an avatar figure. I am the living embodiment of this greater principle, the greater spirits. And so this is what the universal teaching of this one religion is. It is that all is one. There is only one God, one consciousness. It's a universal consciousness that is essentially experiencing itself. What I mean by this is whatever you want to call it, God, spirit, universal intelligence, divine love, source, whatever it may be, is infinite, eternal, timeless. But what it can't do is experience and understand itself. In order to do that, it needs to divide itself, to basically explode into this infinite number of shards or fragments. And these little God fragments, which we might call souls, essentially interact with one another through this drama that's happening throughout the universe and potentially infinite universes. It is this endless game that we all get to be a part of, and it's God experiencing itself by putting on, by playing roles of limitation and experiencing all the individual aspects of itself. It kind of experiences its own totality through us. And so this is the core of the one teaching, is that all is one. This is why Jesus says things like, you abide in me and I abide in the Father, right? He says things like, I and the Father are one. There is one God, one Spirit. Things of that nature, because there is one God and we are all it. If you study the Hermetic principles, one of the foundational principles there is that this universe is mental, all is mind. It is all a process of thought and creation and experience, and there are universal laws that govern our existence here. One of the main ones being, what we put out is what we get back. In other words, reality is a mere reflection of our own state of consciousness, our own beliefs, thoughts, attitudes, worldviews, and with the life we experience is the result of our own beliefs and choices. So Jesus in Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 and 2 says, judge not lest you be judged. For with the judgment you pronounce, you yourself will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. This is what many traditions have called karma. This is the law of karma in action. What you put out, you get back. What is within you, you will perceive without you. And so the nature of this reality is an inside-out reality. It's not that I wait for circumstances and things to change how I feel on the inside. It's we determine what we think, what we feel, and what we put out, we will see reflected back to us. And so when it comes to this process of remembering, of self-realization and self-actualization, every religion is teaching a process of remembering that we are all a part of this one consciousness, that we are saved from our own suffering through the realization of who we really are and who we've always been. And this is what's been called Christ consciousness, the experience of being one with the all, who we really are. And so it is by the Son of God within us that we are saved. It's the birth of Christ from within our own hearts, the resurrection of Christ that is born in us, our Buddha nature, whatever you call it. It's been called many things in many traditions, but it is not about the man. Jesus the man, Buddha the man. It is about Christ the principle. This is why St. Paul in Colossians chapter 1 says, it is the Christ in you who is the hope of glory. And so this is the end of every religion, every spiritual tradition throughout time. Now, why has this been so distorted? Why all these contradicting doctrines and messages? Well, when it comes down to it, there are people who have controlled our world for many thousands of years. I won't mention names. It's been called this ruling elite has been called many things, but essentially, if humanity were to wake up to who we really were, the existing structures, the corrupt systems would all collapse. We would no longer stand for them. Politics, government, medicine, religion, finance, and banking, it would all come crashing down because we would realize that we are these free, sovereign, infinitely powerful beings who no longer want to be slaves in the system. We no longer are here to sleepwalk our way through a mediocre and painful life. We would realize that we're here to create a magnificent life and have this amazing existence of joy and abundance and love. And so this truth has been hidden from us. Now, one of the other arguments I hear against this Things like banking and politics are corrupt, but my religion could never be corrupted because God wouldn't let this happen. God would never let his own word be corrupted. And this is a good discussion to have, but I think when it comes down to it, we're playing a game of free will, and God does honor the choices that we make. And so there are many people over many centuries who have made the decision to warp the very pure teachings and use the authority of this higher divine power for their own self-serving purposes. And the effects of this must play themselves out on this chessboard of life over time. We are still experiencing the effects because this is how the game goes. Humanity as a collective experiences the choices that we've made. However, any move that's made by the darkness, by the negative polarity, does always unwittingly serve the higher good. And what I believe that humanity is stepping into, what I think that God is trying to show us right now, is that we don't need any external authority to access the divinity that's inside us and to receive this pure teaching. It is about connecting with ourselves. It's about remembering who we are and accessing the divine nature that lies in every single one of us. And so, if we are being told by somebody else or some book to follow a God who is angry and retributive, punishing, jealous and spiteful, a God who chooses one group of people, saves that group, and just throws out all the rest, then this is not God we are being told to follow. There's no parent in the world who would treat even their own kid like that. So if we think this God of infinite love could be that immature, that petty, I think we're kidding ourselves. One of the things I know for certain is that God is love. And so any religion, any doctrine, any teaching that divides human beings, that pits one group against the other group, that is used to incite violence or justify wars, anything that is used by the people in control to perpetuate this attitude of fear and this tribalistic us versus them mentality. This is not of God. And if we fall for this, we have been conned into worshiping fear and being used as this instrument of hatred. The God that I choose to serve is a God of love. And this God would never judge, would never condemn, would never hold grudges, would never withhold anything from anyone, because there is more than enough to go around. This is not only a God of love, but a God of abundant love. This is a God who wants us to have it all and experience what we want to experience. We cannot fail. This is not a game where we can lose. We're never alone. We always have the support we need, and each one of us is a winner simply because of our willingness to play the game. And so remember that you are infinitely supported this whole way through. You are exactly where you need to be. And all the things that you want to experience, all the love, the connection, the joy, the fulfillment, the excitement, the freedom, the abundance, all of these things that we've been taught to look outside of ourselves for, they are already within us, because that is the core of who we are. That's who we've always been, and it's about unraveling all of the programmings and the beliefs, the things we've been told, the things we've been taught. It's letting go of our trauma. It's forgiving the people who hurt us so we can make space within ourselves to actually experience our true Christ nature, our true Buddha nature, our true divinity that is who we are. So guys, thank you so much for joining me for this first edition of Scripture Sundays. I'll be back with more. Again, leave me a comment in the comment section down below, letting me know what kind of topics you would like me to cover, what kind of questions you have, maybe things that never sat right with you when it came to religion. I will attempt to address them all and respond to any of your comments. I love hearing from you guys. Really appreciate your engagement and your support. Have a very blessed day, and I will see you next time.